Happy Red Friday, Chiefs Kingdom. We are back. When I say we, I guess it's just me today for this Red Friday. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Looking forward to the weekend. All those good things coming up with Thanksgiving. Wanted to touch on the game for this weekend, but first, I think it's important that the Kansas City Chiefs really use this opportunity to bounce back from what was an underwhelming performance against the Buffalo Bills. Dropping a game of that caliber is always a tough thing to swallow for a team, and they know they're going to see those guys again, of course, but you want to get them in every moment. And the quest for an undefeated season has now, that's over. We've closed the book on that conversation, and it's time to see whether or not the Chiefs can hold on to the 1 seed. That's the new narrative surrounding this team. Can they maintain the lead that they build up to this point? So to do that, they're going to have to really, really focus on making this a bounce back game against the Carolina Panthers this Sunday in Carolina. This has the makings of a situation where they play to the level of the competition. And I don't think that's going to do very well for anyone's confidence in this scenario. So buckling down, focusing on those different areas where the Chiefs faltered in the game against Buffalo. Those are going to be some key points for what this team is going to need to do. So, with that, we'll jump into the injury report for the Kansas City Chiefs. As it stands today, Charles Omenihu and Isaiah Pacheco have been practicing in limited capacities this week. So those are really positive developments for the Kansas City Chiefs as they start to work towards the game against the Carolina Panthers this weekend. I think additionally, you're just looking at some of the other guys who have these bumps and bruises. Juju's still dealing with some things related to his injury. You've got Kareem Hunt, who's been taking some punishment out there running the football. And then additionally, on the Panthers side, Adam Thielen has a strong possibility of coming back into action. So I know that'll be a welcome weapon for this team. But Miles Sanders, notably, has not practiced this week. They're still missing Taylor Moton. Has not practiced the entire week, starting tackle for that offense. So, all things considered, the Chiefs are looking really healthy going into this one. So that's going to be a chance for them to get everybody on the field, play some meaningful snaps, and work towards a potential blowout of the Carolina Panthers, because really that's the confidence builder that this team needs. Some things to focus on for Kansas City in this game: obviously get the win. I think that's a clear-cut focus for this team. But additionally, you really want to focus on those fundamental pieces we talked about in our last episode, wrapping up the Buffalo Bills game. This week, for Xavier Worthy, it should have been all about sideline awareness. Understanding where you need to put your feet and when, and how that coincides with the timing of running your route. For Patrick Mahomes, it needs to be pocket presence. Understanding that the pocket, although you do have things to worry about on the left side of the line, you're not always under fire, and you don't have to bail out just so soon. Because what we've seen with him is he's running into these defensive linemen. And the Panthers, they're a little banged up on the defensive side. It's part of the reason why the rest of the teams in the NFL have really been picking on them. But from that standpoint, you have to use that as kind of a safety blanket, right? You got to understand that, okay, I have Jadeveon Clowney, I have A'Shawn Robinson, potentially coming at me. But, this defense doesn't get super creative from a blitzing standpoint. You're not going to find a lot of those things that you find in the practice squad of the Kansas City Chiefs. And really, the Panthers defense is just littered with guys, quality players on the IR. No Derek Brown, no Shaq Thompson. Nick Scott, very playable safety. In addition to that, Patrick Mahomes has to focus on ball security through 2 interceptions. There is a guy on the Panthers defense who can potentially force some turnovers, and if anyone on that defense can, it's going to be J.C. Horn. He'll likely be shadowing our number 1 receiver, which in most cases I would say that's probably DeAndre Hopkins, but he played less than 50% of the snaps last week. So with that being the case, likely going to see a lot of J.C. Horn lining up against Xavier Worthy, maybe a little bit of D-Hop if we're running a 1 wide receiver set. But really, that's the third thing on the offensive side I think needs to be focused on is getting DeAndre Hopkins more involved in this offense. I mean, really, there's not a lot of reward, I would say, to playing him more than the 60% if they're trying to balance that out for their compensation. But at least get him in for over 50 and kind of teeter that line as you move towards the back end of the season, because if D-Hop isn't getting the reps that he needs in this offense, how can we expect him to be ready for the playoffs? How can the Chiefs expect him to be ready for the playoffs in this offense if he's not getting the time in those game situations? So I want to see a little bit more of that as a focus on the offense. On the defensive side, Bryce Young is one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. If he's playing a full game, that is. He has a great left tackle in Ekwonu. Outside of that, Motom maybe not playing. There's some of these guys where, you could take advantage of the offensive line, and Spagnuolo's good enough to throw some of those disguises in coverage and in blitzes to bring pressure down on Bryce Young. So it's focusing on finishing those pressures against him and making them pay for allowing the Chiefs to kind of get under the radar with that. Another thing to focus on, nailing down this run game. I don't foresee the quarterbacks being mobile in the Josh Allen sense this week. But Chuba Hubbard has been fantastic. Jonathan Brooks, a promising rookie, is making his way back to the field most likely this week. And then Miles Sanders, who likely won't play, still dangerous if he does. Those are all guys that you need to focus on. From a defensive perspective, if we're going to maintain the premium rush defense that the Chiefs have built up so far, they need to focus in on those guys. And the final thing I'll say for Kansas City's defense to focus on is the turnovers. The turnovers have been few and far in between. We got an interception from Josh Allen, but still sitting at a negative turnover differential coming into this game. A lot of things that can be worked on there, whether it's, punching that ball out a little bit more. I know Drew Tranquill tried to do that in a game-saving fashion against Josh Allen on that final run. We need to see some more of that from everyone else, because I feel like it's mostly been Drew Tranquill doing the peanut punch, and it's just such an effective move. I don't understand why everyone doesn't do it. But additionally to that, you're playing a young quarterback who really has not performed up to par. And so using that inexperience to generate some turnovers is going to be critical in this game. I mean, that's really the big key points, I think, of feedback, and probably knowing how good of a coach Andy Reid is, the main points of focus and emphasis in their installs throughout the entirety of the week. Not a lot of implications to talk about in this game as a whole, so it's going to be a shorter episode today. Panthers effectively eliminated and fighting for a top 5 pick. In the NFC, not a lot of implications there from a playoff standpoint. It's more just get this freaking win, hold on to that 1.5 game lead or one game lead that we have on Buffalo. Make sure the Chiefs are going into the playoffs as the 1 seed, because that bye week is ever so important. Going to spend the last couple minutes talking about the spreads in this game because it is a doozy. And after some recounts, we're feeling comfortable that sports betting will be passing in Missouri. I know the victory was kind of announced, but some counties had come out and maybe shed some new light on different pieces there. But as the dust continues to settle, it's looking like it's a sure thing. So, as it stands today, the Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites on the road. Incredible. It opened at 11.5, so got some people trusting the Panthers to keep it close here, which I think is swaying Vegas a little bit. I don't think the Chiefs' offensive performance has really done them any favors in that regard. I personally will be taking the Chiefs to cover this game. I don't think it's close. I think it's going to be a 13 or more point victory for Kansas City. The Panthers have found most of their strengths in the run game this year. That's where the defense really hasn't faltered outside of QB running performance. And even then, it's really just Josh Allen who's had his way with the Kansas City defense from a running perspective. So, with Carolina having that focus, Bryce Young likely starting, even if Andy Dalton were to come in the second half and get some junk points, I think by then it's a little bit too far gone and Kansas City will still keep their foot on the gas a little bit. So I think the spread holds true. The total at 42.5, now that's a little bit more questionable. Because if this ends up being a 28-13 game, let's just say, I mean, you're teetering right there on the line. That's 41 points at that point. They get some junk touchdown at the end, 31-20. That's your over. So I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take the Chiefs to cover in this situation. Like I said, I do think it's a 13-point victory. I don't think the Panthers are completely blanked in this scenario. And that total is pretty low. I mean, that just shows that Vegas doesn't have a lot of confidence in the Chiefs, really, to put up points. And how can you blame them? I think more interestingly is how is the Chiefs kicker going to put up points? Butker on IR, of course. How is Schrader going to put up points when we didn't see him line up for a field goal in the Bills game? There's some unknowns there. But the Panthers are going to have to hold them to field goals in those situations, and that's not something they've been great at this year. So 76% according to ESPN that the Chiefs take the win here. I mean, I'm riding with probably what everyone's thinking here. This is not going to be one of those situations where you're expecting it to be close, and if it is, then you can expect some discourse on that after the game. Not only from Trey and I, but from the entirety of the league, of the league and anyone who covers it. It's going to be one of those situations there. So appreciate everyone listening. We'll try and get another episode pumped out, probably one next week for Thanksgiving, and just keep pressing on, man. So we're in week 12. Hard to believe we are already 3 quarters basically into the season. Appreciate everybody for listening. You can find us at @thefastest_40 on X and IG. And if you want to check out the podcast, you can listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Appreciate everyone for listening. Take care and go Chiefs. Peace.